everybody, this is Gary from Constricted and Addicted. Happy New Year's Eve to everybody, and I hope that everybody is preparing themselves to have them a safe and happy new year as we close out 2021. I know it's been a rough and tough year for me, but you know what? We all go through things, we all go through challenges. How we respond to them and how we get to the other side, it's what makes a difference. And I'm really grateful for a lot of things that have taken place in my life. And you know, I'm ready for 2022. I'm ready to see what comes next, and I hope you guys are too. So one of the things that we're going to do today is we're going to take a look at what the cost in the upkeep is to have several reptiles. I know that if you have one reptile, this may not apply to you. Sometimes the cost is insignificant as far as feeding, as far as heating, as far as maintenance, upkeep, and things like that, substrate. It may not be as significant as somebody who has multiple reptiles. So that's what this video is going to be geared towards. It's going to be towards what I've spent in 2021 as far as enclosures, as far as heating, as far as all the upkeep for the enclosures and everything else that it takes to maintain my animals on a yearly basis. So we're going to also include in this video the purchase of enclosures, because this year I did purchase all new enclosures for my animals because all of my dwarf boas are inside of a rack system that will house large ball pythons. But I don't want them in that. I want them in these enclosures like you see behind me. I've got some sitting right behind the camera. I've got some down in a barn. I've got some behind a couch in my living room. And the deal is I'm going to tear this room completely apart and redo everything and hopefully move all but maybe 4 snakes into here. And we're going to go into the video, let you know what it costs. So the first cost that I have is enclosures, because that was probably the most significant cost that I had this year in 2021. I have a lot of boa constrictors that will be gaining size, this Argentine being one of them. He is my 2020 Argentine Boa Constrictor. Argentine Boa Constrictors can get large. They have the capacity to get anywhere between 8 and 10 feet long, and this guy is pretty good sized for being just under 2 years old. So I bought an 8-foot cage for him. I have another 8-foot cage that I'm getting ready to paint up and bring in here. Plus I bought about 5-6 more 4-foot enclosures. As a matter of fact, some of which I'm actually going to be joining together and then cutting out the ends on each one to make one 8-foot enclosure. So those I spent almost $1,400 on. I have the sheet right here, my cheat sheet. Actually, I take that back. I spent $2,189 with AP cages this year on brand new enclosures. And I know that I've done videos with AP enclosures before about how slow they are. What I can share with you is that I've had personal contact with the company, and I have talked to them, and their ship times have improved. Now, I've had 2 prior shipments this year that took a very long time to get, but I placed another order in the middle of the year, and it got here within their quick ship program. It actually shipped out and was at my front doorstep within that time frame. So kudos to AP cages. If you are not familiar with AP cages, they are amazing enclosures. It's the only enclosures that I use for my snakes or my larger snakes. Eventually, every one of my snakes will be in the AP enclosures. They're very streamlined. They're very easy to put together, and it doesn't cost a whole lot of money for me to add the excess heating, lighting, and everything like that. So I spent almost $2,200 on AP enclosures this year for my snakes to get them all into enclosures that look like this. The next accessory that I spent money on, and it was for the enclosures, is obviously lighting and heating mats and thermostats. Probably close to $600 to $700 between all of everything. And the reason for that is because I actually put 2 heat pads on each enclosure. And what I like to do, incorrect or correct, For me, it just makes sense, is I have a side on my enclosure that is at 90 degrees-ish. It might be 1 degree higher or lower. And then the other side, I have the heat mat set at 75. So that way is an actual gradient temperature on one end of the enclosure to the other. So you can take a heat gun and you can point it at the hot side and be at 90 degrees. You can put it in the middle of the enclosure. You can be somewhere around 80-ish degrees. And then on the other side, you can be anywhere between 75 and 72 degrees. So it really, truly is a warm spot, a kind of warm spot, and then a cooler spot in their enclosures, no matter what degrees of temperature the room is here. But I do have a heater in this room that runs constantly during the winter time, because I don't keep the house at 75 degrees. So wherever the snakes are, I do have an external heater in there to make sure that the room stays warmer than the rest of the house, because I don't want the air temperature in those rooms to drop below 70 degrees. So within that, I've spent probably, like I said, $600-700 on thermostats, on heating pads, and other things, LED lights for the enclosures, the hides, substrate. I've got a lot of money in substrate. I don't even really want to go into how much. What I've done in the past is I've bought cases of cocoa blocks from Freedom Breeder. But what happened with the cocoa blocks, I'll be very honest and transparent, is that I get lazy because they go to the bathroom and I don't see it all the time. So they would go to the bathroom and it would sit in there and I would find it, and sometimes it would have mold on it. And I would feel terrible because I'd look and I wouldn't see it because it kind of just, sometimes it blends in with the substrate. So I have stopped using cocoa blocks, any sort of a brown substrate for the time being. I've put them all back on paper towels. And the reason I've done that is because when they go to the bathroom on the paper towels, I see it. I see it immediately. I clean it up. I put them on new paper towels. It makes me feel better. It makes, hopefully for them, it's a better and cleaner environment. And maybe at some point in time, I'll go back to the cocoa blocks, but it's just really difficult for me to do that because I love the humidity that the cocoa blocks holds. I love the way it makes the enclosures look, but I'm not a big fan of when they go to the bathroom, it all looks the same. And you got to get in there. You really got to look for it. And sometimes it just becomes more of a chore with the cocoa blocks. And that's just me. I see people with cocoa blocks all the time. I swear by cocoa blocks. But the problem with me is that sometimes I miss their going to the bathroom and it sits in there, and I don't want them doing that anymore. So for the time being, they are on paper towels. I've never had a bad shed on paper towels yet. So that's where I'm at with substrate. So the substrate cost can vary depending on what I am using for my substrate with my animals. So if I'm using the cocoa blocks, I can guarantee that I'm going to spend $250 per time that I order with Freedom Breeder, and each time I change out the substrate about every 8 weeks. So you figure that's about 4 times, 5 times a year that I'm purchasing from Freedom Breeder. If I do the paper towels, it's almost constant. I'm in here all the time checking their enclosures. I see they've gone to the bathroom. It gets changed out immediately, and the paper towels will last me probably about a month and a half. So, spending $30 times 6, call that $200 in paper towels a year. So the substrate can get expensive as well. All right, so now we're going to talk about probably the most consistent bill that we have throughout the year owning multiple animals, and that's the feeding costs. And I did the math on it. Throughout the year, I've averaged at least 15 snakes in my possession. And most of the snakes that I have in my possession are juvenile snakes. They're between the ages of 1 and 3, or actually probably 4 months old and 3, with the exception of 2 of my snakes being 6 years old and 1 of my snakes being 3 years old. The rest of them are about the size of a Drestia here, my Hog Island Boa. So these animals all get fed once every 2 weeks. So if I'm feeding them once every 2 weeks, that means I'm feeding them 26 times a year. And at 15 animals, so I get the opportunity to go to a local breeder and I pick up a lot of rodents for half of what you would pay for at your local pet store, at a Serpentarium, any place like that that sells feeders, I get them for probably $2 a piece. As a matter of fact, I just picked up 100 large mice for $100. There's a nonprofit organization out here where I live, and what they do is they have feeder mice for their wild animals that they feed, and they ended up with an abundance. So they contacted me and said, hey, we've got some feeders. Are you interested? So I took $100 worth of mice, which was 100 mice. And what it does is it goes to their organization. I was glad I could help them. They were glad they could help me. So it really works out in the end. It saves on my bill. But see, that's just this one time. Typically, I pay anywhere between probably close to $2, whether it's an extra large rat or a large mouse from my local breeder here. And so about $700 a year is what it averages out to for me to feed all my snakes. These guys eat every 2 weeks. Matilda will be going to every 3 weeks here very shortly. And then Max and Coconut, they're 6 years old. They eat once a month, every 4 weeks. So, of course, feeding them is much cheaper than feeding the rest of the snakes that I have. But when you put it all together on an average of, I believe I put $2 per mouse at 15 snakes, doing the math real quick, is $30 a week times 2 is 60, then 60 times 12 is 360. So that's totally wrong. I don't remember what I said. I think I came up with $676. I'll have to check my math on that, but I'm sure that there was a reason why because there's 56 weeks. We'll figure it out. I'm not going to sit here and try and do this on camera, but it's quite a bit of money, you know. So with actually owning a bunch of snakes comes the feeding bill, where it's not very cheap. But I'll tell you, I do believe that it's probably cheaper than keeping a dog or a cat, because we do have those, and my wife goes out and spends a lot of money on cat food and dog food. So I gotta say, it's probably very similar actually to keep 15 snakes in my possession as it is to keep 2 dogs in my possession for the cost of feeding per year. So if you have multiple snakes, be prepared for a food bill. All right, so one of the things that I've been super fortunate with is vet bills. And I haven't had any vet bills this year other than one vet bill for $120. It was, I believe it was before my Bolivian had passed away. We had taken her to the vet earlier in the year, and unfortunately, there was nothing they could do for her, but that vet bill cost me $120. That's one of the things about owning snakes. It's important that you find an exotics vet in your area so that when something does happen, you're not scrambling at the last minute to find an exotic vet to take your animal to. Where we live, the closest one is an hour and 30 minutes away. So it's always important that we understand where we're going, who's capable of working on exotic animals like snakes. I run into people all the time in my area, vets, and it's the first thing I ask when I find out they're a vet. I say, hey, do you guys work on boa constrictors or snakes? And the typical answer is no. So that is one of the things that if you own a cat or dog, you can go to the local vet clinic. Sometimes they've got a 24/7 emergency center, and they can take care of that. But if you bring a snake in, sometimes you're not going to get the same luck and treatment as you would if you know where your exotics vet is. So if you own snakes, it's a good thing to know where is that vet and make sure you have access to them. All right, and the last thing I want to talk about is the heating bill. And obviously when you've got snakes, you're going to have heaters that are running 24/7. Thankfully for the thermostats, they control the heat, but they are running because they will keep them at a constant temperature. As soon as they drop, the thermostat kicks back on, starts heating, kicks back off, kicks back on, kicks back off. So you've got your cost in electricity bill for the year, and it's very hard for me to compute that because of the amount of heaters that I have and the constant on off with all the heaters that I have with the thermostats. I average it out to probably close to $250 to $300 a year in heating costs to keep these guys warm. and to keep them comfortable. Which, in the hindsight of things, if it's that a year, you're talking $30 a month, under $30 a month to keep your snakes warm if you have multiple snakes. So it does get expensive when you start adding together the feeding, the heating, if you're buying new enclosures, if you have vet bills, if you're buying substrate, your accessories for your enclosures. Sometimes your snakes get older and the hide that you have when they were 1 year old is not the same hide that they need when they're 2 years old. So you're upgrading things constantly. And these are the things that I took into account from 2021, from the start of 2021 to the end of 2021, when I look at what did it cost me to house and keep these animals this year. And it costs a lot of money, but I'll tell you what, I wouldn't change it for anything. I absolutely would not change it for anything. I love my snakes to death, and my stand on this is that if I'm going to own them, I've got to be sure that I can give them the best care. And if I'm going to own a lot of these animals like I do, I want to make sure that I can afford their upkeep and their maintenance. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, I'm super excited with the new subscribers. I totally appreciate everybody who's tuned in, who's commented, who watches my channel, who takes time out of their day. What I want to say to everybody is that I hope you guys have a great new year, a safe new year, a prosperous 2022. And I've got a lot of good things coming up on this channel for 2022. I've got a lot of surprises. There's going to be a giveaway at some point. We're working on the details and how we're going to work that out. I've got some interviews with some really cool people coming up. Tune in on Saturday, which this video hopefully will be up on New Year's Eve. So the following day, we're going to have the all-Canadian reptile girl. We're going to be doing an interview with her. It was an amazing interview. I had a lot of fun with her, and I can't wait to show that to you guys. So keep tuned. I appreciate you guys, and we'll see you in 2022.